Let's go back in time. We're heading to a remote farmstead in Bavaria, Germany, way back in March of 1922. The air's cold, the farm is completely isolated, and for days, there's been this eerie silence. The mail's just piling up, a little 7-year-old girl hasn't shown up to school, and everyone's starting to get that feeling that something is terribly, terribly wrong.
When neighbors finally decide they have to go check it out, they force their way onto the property. And what they find, well, it explains the silence. 6 people, an entire family plus their brand new maid, are all dead. This wasn't some kind of accident. This was a flat-out massacre.
The weapon they used, it's the stuff of nightmares, really. It was a mattock, a heavy, pickaxe-like tool from the farm itself, and it was used to bludgeon every single one of them. The level of violence was just extreme, and you can tell it was personal.
But here's where this story takes a turn into the truly chilling. What did the killer do after the murders? They didn't just run, no. They stayed. For 3 whole days, they milked the cows, they fed the rest of the livestock, they even kept the chimney smoking, all while the bodies of the family lay hidden in the barn and in the house. This wasn't some crime of passion or panic. This suggests a terrifying, unnatural kind of calm.
So who exactly were these people? Well, the family at the center of this whole mystery was the Gruber family. Now, around the village, they were known for being hardworking, but also pretty standoffish. They were the kind of family that kept to themselves, and they were weighed down by some very dark rumors.
Let's meet the victims. You have the patriarch, Andreas, and his wife, Catilia. Then there's their widowed daughter, Victoria, and her 2 young children. And so tragically, there was also the new maid, Maria Baumgartner. It was her very first day of work. Now, the family's isolation, it was made even worse by this public scandal. Years earlier, both Andreas and his daughter Victoria had been convicted of incest, and that, as you can imagine, pretty much alienated them from the entire community.
But here's the thing, these murders didn't just happen out of the blue. In the weeks and even months leading up to the crime, the farm was, well, it was plagued by a series of really unsettling and frankly bizarre events that all pointed to something being deeply, deeply wrong.
And this timeline is just crucial to understanding the whole thing. It really starts months before, when the family's previous maid just up and quits. She was terrified, claiming the house was haunted, that she heard noises. Then the clues get a lot more real. A strange newspaper that they don't subscribe to just appears. Then there are footprints in the fresh snow leading to the farm, but none leading away. And a house key just vanishes into thin air. Now, Andreas Gruber told his neighbors about all this stuff, but he just kind of brushed it off. He never once called the police.
So this brings up the central question that absolutely terrified the community. Were these the actions of some kind of ghost, like the first maid believed? Or was it something far more sinister? A human predator, hiding in plain sight, just watching them, learning their routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With the police investigation going cold almost right away, the case became this magnet for speculation. I mean, over the next 100 years, more than 100 different suspects would be named. Countless theories would pop up, and they ranged from the kind of plausible to the completely fantastic.
Okay, so the first major theory, it's pure drama. Sounds like something out of a movie. What if Victoria's husband, Carl Gabriel, didn't actually die in World War I? I mean, his body was never recovered, so that fueled all these rumors that maybe he survived, came back home, found his wife in disgrace, and took some kind of terrible revenge.
It's a great story, right? But it falls apart really quickly under scrutiny. You've got multiple eyewitnesses from his own unit, not to mention official military records, that all confirmed he was killed in action in France. So while it makes for a compelling tale, it's just not backed up by any facts.
Now fast forward decades later to 1951. The case gets briefly reopened, all thanks to a deathbed confession. A woman claimed her brothers, Adolf and Anton Gump, were the real killers. Supposedly, they were acting out of some twisted sense of honor because of the incest rumors that were swirling around Victoria.
But this theory also hits a pretty big wall. There was zero physical evidence. It was just hearsay. And what's more, the confessing sister's own family described her as, unreliable and kinda spiteful. So without any real corroboration, the case against the Gump brothers just completely collapsed.
And the list just goes on and on. People speculated about a random vagrant, but that doesn't make sense. The killer didn't steal anything and actually took care of the farm. A vigilante? Maybe? But why wait 7 years after the incest conviction was public knowledge? Then you start getting into supernatural explanations and even these wild theories about American serial killers. They're all dead ends.
Okay, so after we clear away all that speculation, all the ghosts, the conspiracies, the wild theories, we're left with one suspect who doesn't require any of those leaps of faith. It's time we apply something called Occam's razor. You know, the principle that the simplest explanation is often the right one. And that leads us directly to a neighbor, a man named Lorenz Schlittenbauer.
Just look at how cleanly this all lines up. First, motive? Victoria, who was his former lover, was about to sue him for child support for her son Josef. A lawsuit like that would have absolutely ruined his reputation and his finances. Second, means? He lived just down the path, he knew the farm's layout inside and out, and he was familiar with the murder weapon. And third, opportunity? And this is the real kicker. He had his own key to the house. That explains how the killer got in without breaking a single window or lock.
And if that's not enough, his behavior on the day the bodies were discovered is even more damning. He's the one who organizes the search party. He uses his key to enter the house alone. He makes this bizarre comment about looking for his son Josef, the very same child he had publicly disowned. And most suspiciously of all, he moves the bodies. He completely contaminates the crime scene before the authorities can even get there to secure it. It's almost like he was trying to control the entire narrative right from the very beginning.
As one researcher later put it, too much speaks for him. Almost nothing speaks against. And that really sums it up. When you look at this mountain of circumstantial evidence, it all points in one single direction. And while there was no smoking gun, the weight of his motive, his access, and his actions is it's overwhelming.
So you see, we don't need a ghost story. We don't need a long-lost soldier to explain what happened at Hinterkaifeck. The simplest answer is also the most terrifying one, because it isn't rooted in the supernatural at all. It's rooted in ordinary, everyday human darkness.
The person who crept onto that farm wasn't some phantom or a stranger from a faraway land. It was someone they knew, someone who lived right across the fields. A neighbor.
This person didn't need to break down a door or shatter a window. No, they had their own access, a level of trust that just makes the crime all the more intimate and all the more horrifying. They got in with a key.
And this wasn't just some random act of violence. It was methodical, it was targeted, and it was driven by a powerful personal motive to erase a problem, to silence a lawsuit, and to protect a reputation, no matter the cost. It happened for a reason.
So here's the most likely sequence of events. Cornered by that lawsuit, Lorenz Schlittenbauer let himself into the farm. He systematically executed the entire family. He stayed for days to cover his tracks, and then he staged the discovery to position himself as just another concerned neighbor. In fact, a modern police analysis back in 2007 concluded that only one main suspect really fit the profile, and all signs point directly to him.
In the end, that's what makes the Hinterkaifeck story so enduringly chilling. It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. What's scarier, a faceless monster that comes from the shadows, or a familiar face from just down the road? The kind of evil that doesn't need to break down your door, because it already has a key.